In tonight's chat, what we've got Wolverine here who's asking for some advice, and what he said is that he's interested in trying out other games, but nobody wants to play them. His friends basically think that 40k is the best and the only miniatures war game, and therefore that's what his kind of group plays. And as I kind of scroll down through his chat as well, there's some other comments where he's saying 40k is getting way too expensive. It's hard to have other hobbies when you play 40k, and he's thinking of getting into Legion, Marvel Crisis Protocol, that kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to say something that I think is probably quite controversial. I don't think Warhammer 40k is overly expensive. Now, bear with me. Don't turn off. Let me clarify what I'm saying here. If you already play Warhammer 40k, you've probably already got an army, you'll have collected it for a period of time. If that's what all of your friends play and that's what you've been playing, you've probably been collecting and painting it for quite some time. In theory, you can play for free from now on. You've got your rulebook, you've got your codex, you've got your army, you've got your dice, you might have your terrain, you might have your table, or you go to a gaming club. You don't technically need to buy any more stuff to keep playing it. Games Workshop have done a really, really fantastic marketing job in convincing people that they need to buy everything that gets released for 40k. There's a new tank comes out, there's an expansion book, there's basically like new Black Library books, that there's new armies coming out, there's new models coming out. Unless those models are for the army that you play, and you really want them because you want something new to add to your army, maybe because that's your hobby kind of thing. You've paid, I'm going to say something even more controversial. Maybe you've painted everything that you have. That's pretty unlikely. But if you've built and painted everything that you have for your army, you technically don't really need to buy anything else. So it's easy to say Warhammer 40k is an expensive game, and it might be if you're just starting out. But if you're already playing it, you don't have to chase the meta. You don't have to have the latest everything else, right? That aside, if you don't want to play 40k anymore, if you've just had enough of it and you want to try something else and all of your friends are really just into 40k, really all you need is one other person to play against. You have to kind of weigh up those options, as in, do I really love playing with this group of people more than how important the game is? Because not everybody loves 40k, but some people love playing 40k with their group of friends. Because if the game is more important than the people you play with, then technically you only need to find one more person that's interested in the same game that you're interested in, and then you've got somebody else to play. So if I take Legion and Marvel Crisis Protocol as the two games that I was maybe interested in, they're both not cheap games either. Legion is another army scale game, so even though the starter box isn't that expensive, by the time you're starting from absolute scratch and buying a full-size army to play that game, you're going to be spending quite a bit of money, probably more money than you would have spent just buying the odd thing here and there for your army for 40k. Because remember, you're not going to go into Star Wars Legion and buy all of the models. Well, technically, yeah, you might not be. Marvel Crisis Protocol, you need a lot less models to play the game, but the models are quite expensive. It puts a lot of people off because individual models can be, in comparison to something like Warhammer 40k, a lot more expensive. The difference being you might only need 5 or 6 models to play the game. But again, what happens is it becomes part of your hobby. You're collecting, you're painting, you want to get all of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you want to maybe get an Asgard force, and then you want to get Avengers. Now all of a sudden you want Spider Force. That's when it starts to get expensive. And again, it can be just as expensive as Warhammer 40k. I personally spent probably in the region of about £700 or £800, not last year, the year before, collecting the Marvel Crisis Protocol minis. I absolutely love them. But that's me personally. I don't play kind of like Warhammer 40k or anything like that. And I accepted if I want to collect these for to hobby with and to play with, that's how much it's going to cost. But you don't need to spend that much money. And this is where you get back to that kind of situation where, do you want a hobby? In which case, just buy the stuff that you want to paint. It doesn't really matter what game it's for. It doesn't really matter if you can't find anybody to play. Do you just want to play the game? And if so, Don't get caught up in that hype of buying every single new release that comes out, because that's when it gets expensive. And if you're just enjoying playing with a group of people, maybe the game isn't actually that important. Maybe it's just the camaraderie kind of thing, the friendship, the community of having some people to talk to about the game, having people to share your love of the hobby with, and basically sort of having a game to look forward to, be that once a week or once a month or whatever it is. Maybe the game's less important. So maybe it's a bit controversial to say Warhammer's not as expensive as all that. But what I'm really saying is that don't get caught up in that need to buy every single release that comes out. That's when it gets expensive. Yes, there's certain models that are like maybe £80, £90 or $90 or $100, but they are them one-off centerpiece models. You're not buying like 5 or 6 of those. You're buying them as a nice big model for the center of your army. And if you look at other games like Conquest, for example, is another army scale game that has some very expensive big centerpiece models. If you look at Marvel Crisis Protocol, the bigger models, I've got Thanos on my table here that I've been painting. There's like the big Dormammu models. They're not cheap either, those big kind of centerpiece models. So it's not just a 40k thing. So yeah, if you really are wanting to get out of 40k and play something else, just all you need is one more person to play against. Don't worry about kind of trying to find 25 people to play against. There's plenty of events out there for the more well-known games and the more popular games. You've got to make the effort and go and look for them.